guys from the special forces environment, I would say most of them, I would say 99% of them would say, I'll prove you wrong. They're not going to believe someone who tells them something like that, but the odd person might. And it's also relevant to what you tell yourself. But regarding how someone would deal with that, like a soldier on the ground dealing with potential incidents that could cause potential PTSD in the long run, I guess that's not going to catch up with them for quite some time, a lot of the time, you know. Um, you often hear people who have PTSD, it's sometimes years afterwards. Usually not immediately. It's not until later on when there's time to, change a lifestyle, there's something else happens, you've not got that adrenaline rush to keep you going. When things are happening daily on operations, for example, you have a coping mechanism that just deals with it, and you soldier on, you get on with it. But that will be okay at the time because you're conditioned to do that. So soldiers are built in a way that they're conditioned to respond and react in a certain way. That's what their job is. And they'll keep doing that for potentially a long time. But the more that you do it and the more that you ignore something that is potentially, you know, that's gone off inside, then that can take months, if not years, to sometimes come out. But you have a coping mechanism that deals with it at the time, and we'll keep dealing with that for as long as it's needed until the cracks start to appear. And that's usually what happens. And when the cracks start to appear in most people, it's when other behaviors start to change, like, they start to maybe reach for alcohol or drugs, or their behavior changes, their reactions change. They just change as people. And it's not until maybe one day there's a there's a breakdown moment that ends up allowing this to come all out, and then they need serious help. But it's about how long do you pretend that you're okay until you reach that point where, the wheels come off, essentially. But when it comes to the question you asked me about, the original question was something like what would I say to someone who told me that, if they said that you need this medication versus, get on with it sort of thing. What you said is essentially what I've just explained, which is we're here to do a job. You need to just keep going with it. And that's kind of the mentality of the military. There's a job that has to be done. You keep going until it's done. It's not until later that these things will come out, obviously.
I think
So
that
yeah.
was incredibly well said. And that's actually a really good segue to kind of the next thing I want to talk about. What, what does it take for a guy to be in the position you were in, be at the tip of the spear, be in the 22 SAS? If they boot someone out, is it alcohol and drugs? Is it performance? Is it they changed as a person? Maybe they came back from war and it trauma changed them. What does it take where it's no questions asked? You do X, Y, and Z. You're leaving this place and you're never coming back.
Well, I mean, if someone gets thrown out,
Yeah.
uh, you know what, I can't speak from experience. I don't know anyone that was thrown out or asked to leave for those reasons, personally. So I can't answer that question from a place of experience. Um, I have witnessed people being, returned to unit for, not being capable enough, or making mistakes that were not in line with the values of the regiment. Definitely that's happened quite a bit. But as far as, someone's mental health, I've never heard of anyone actually being discharged. I've never known anyone who's been discharged for that reason at all. So I honestly couldn't answer that.
So to what you just said there though about guys being returned to unit, is that just a case of where they're just not physically capable maybe anymore, or maybe their shooting skills have gone to shit, so in CQB
Uh,
you can't trust them, or what would cause someone to be returned for unit?
um, yeah, someone like, and this isn't specifics. This is an example of what could
Right.
be a reason. So if someone lost a weapon, for example, right? If you lose a weapon, if you if you're if you get involved in some sort of crime, if you're arrested, go to court, and you're found guilty of a criminal offence, for example, If you're just not up to scratch, if your performance isn't good enough, if you just aren't performing at the level that is required, that's the reason to return someone to unit. If it's something that's involved with fucking theft or anything, it could be anything like that, but it's not very common. It isn't really common that people get returned to unit.
Are you so? I know I've had some guys talk about this on the record at both Delta and SEAL Team 6. If you get returned, if you leave, you go back to whatever your original, whether it's the Rangers, Green Berets, or the regular SEAL teams, and the reason for getting removed wasn't something sinister or criminal. You can come back, I believe, after 18 months. So the example that's always talked about is a guy had a negligent discharge. He itself admitted it, said I ND'd in this area. He was gone for 18 months. After 18 months, he could come back, which is exactly what he did. If you get returned to unit at the SAS, is there a road to come back, or is it just
Yeah, it's
seal
happened
it?
as well. There has been times of, again, very rare, but there's been people who I've personally known in the past, in my time in the regiment, that have been returned to unit then come back. Because at the end of the day, it's like if you look at someone who's on a football or a soccer field, as you call it, like there's an expression that I think is relevant in sports, like when it comes to like soccer players, football players. Um, One good performance doesn't make you a good player, and one bad performance doesn't make you a bad player. It's just something that happened. It's you deal with that at the time, but one negligent discharge doesn't make someone a bad soldier.
Right.
It fucking happens, right? And it's we all fuck up. We all make fuck ups. None of us are perfect. I guess it depends on the enormity of the fuck up and maybe who knows about it, what they can potentially cover up and say, right, we'll keep this in house because it was a fuck up, but we'll keep it between us. That happens as well. But at the end of the day, we're all human. None of us pretend to be perfect. We're going to make mistakes, and that's something that I always embrace, and I always tell my clients is like you're going to fuck things up. Get used to it. Be okay with it, and just learn from the mistakes that you make, and that's part of life. So I think that when we expect people to be perfect, we're setting ourselves up for failure or disappointment because no one is.
Yeah, I mean, there's nobody on this planet that's perfect. I make mistakes. Trust me, my fiance would tell you I make mistakes all the time. So
We all do.
we all do. It's just like you said, you got to accept it and move on. Now, I've only ever interviewed two guys from the SAS. You being one of them, Melvin Downs being the other. Two of my all-time favorite interviews. This one's shaping up to be incredible as well. I know that you and Melvin know each other. I found Melvin to be absolutely fascinating, just incredibly entertaining guy. How long were you guys in the SAS at the same time? And what are your opinions on him as a man and then